Do we have a quorum? Looks like it. Yeah, there you go. Reports from standing committees.
February 23, 2023. Mr. President, to Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 11, State Park Rangers Retirement. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Guru, Kinski, Nethercott, and Salazar. Senator Kinski, Chairman. Committee Number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred House Bill 152, engrossed. Life is a Human Right Act. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators French, Hicks, Ide, Kolb, and Steinmetz. Senator Steinmetz, Chairman. Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 4, engrossed, Medicaid 12-month postpartum coverage. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Guru, Nethercott, and Salazar. Excused, Senator Kinski. Senator Kinski, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Oh, excuse me, Senator Ellis.
Mr. Vice President, may I have privilege of the floor?
Please, you may.
Thank you. I wanted to thank all the senators who were able to join us at the Leap into Leadership gala last night. As you know, Leap into Leadership is a conference which encourages women to run for office. It is organized by the Wyoming Women's Legislative Caucus, which is a nonprofit group. I have the pleasure of chairing it on the Senate side with 2 other of our counterparts down the hall. And so every year we have a wonderful event, get a lot of wonderful people together. And so this year the participants are up in the gallery. They've been learning, getting media training, learning, what it takes to run for office, and just getting a whole bunch of good tips, including, information that needs to go on filings and all of that. So let's welcome them to the Senate.
All right.
Thank you. Any more? Senator Landon.
Mr. Vice President, may I have the privilege of the floor,
Please.
please? Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Mr. Vice President, I just wanted to salute Senator Ellis for her work last night. She did a great job of helping to put on a wonderful event. Senator Nethercott was one of those with the microphone last night. But I also just wanted to send a shout out to a good friend from your neck of the woods. It was wonderful to watch Representative Rosie Berger receive quite an honor last night. So it was good to see her, and had some great friends stop back by, those who had served in the legislature before. So it was good to see them. Just wanted to congratulate Senator Ellis and all of the crew for a great night. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, we are at that order of business, consideration of bills on general file.
Mr. Vice President, I move that the Senate resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You've heard the bill. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Senator Ide, this is your day in the sun.
Don't screw it up.
In the right spot. The Committee of the Whole will please come to order. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 209. Oh, excuse me, got the one on the bottom. House Bill 200. The reader clerk will read the House bill. There we go. Okay.
House Bill 200, Non-Resident Hunting Licenses Application Fees, sponsored by Representative Northrup, an act relating to game and fish. Was referred to Committee Number 6, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Ellis, Guru, Jones, and Schuler. No, Senator Baldwin. Senator Schuler, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that House Bill 200 do pass. And with an explanation of this bill, I would like to turn it over to Majority Floor Leader Hicks.
Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, so if you've seen this bill before, you've seen it before. It's just got a different name on it. It's a House bill now instead of a Senate file. So, Mr. Chairman, this was a work of the 18 months that the Wildlife Task Force convened. This is the culmination of quite a bit of work of that task force. They met 16 times in 18 months. This was a big lift. This was one of the topics that just kept coming back up and back up, and went through extensive public comment on this, different derivations. It ended up as a Senate file, and then there was concerns of this body that it was a potentially revenue-raising bill, so we sent it down to the other end of the building to start it down there to address those concerns. And so, Mr. Chairman, it's back here. So what the bill does is address non-resident hunting license application fees for what we call the Big Five, which is bighorn sheep, mountain goat, moose, grizzly bear, and wild bison. And then it also includes normal elk, deer, and antelope. And keep in mind, these are only non-resident fees. This doesn't deal with any resident license fees. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll walk you through the bill and just tell you what it did. It went in and it changed the license fees for these species. So the meat of the bill is on page 3. And I need to explain this, and I need everybody to pay attention. So the way we do elk, deer, and antelope for non-residents, it's a bifurcated pot of licenses. So there's a 60-40 split. So I'm just going to use an example so everybody can track. So if there was a unit that there was 100 elk licenses for non-residents in, 60% of those licenses are available for what we call the regular or the low price pool. 40% of those licenses go into what we call the special license. This bill only deals for elk, deer, and antelope for that 40% of that license pool. It does not change the fees for that 60% for elk, deer, and antelope. So there's two prices, and it's not unusual. There's a number of other states that have bifurcated prices for some of their big game hunts. So this is not an anomaly. There's a number of states that do this. So specific on page 3, this just deals with elk, deer, and antelope. And what it does is it goes into the license fee for that 40% pool, and it raises those. This program, we've had this bifurcated license system for somewhere going on 25 to 30 years. And so what this bill attempts to do for those license fees is bring those up to the top of the market for those higher price licenses. It doesn't change the lowest price. So the net effect of this, Mr. Chairman, with the increase in the non-resident special license elk will increase that up to $1,258. For deer, it'll add another $826 for the special, and for the antelope, another $874. So, Mr. Chairman, that brings those 40% up to the top of the market. So when I talk about top of the market, that means what is a license worth in the 11 or 12 western states. So this would move that special license fee for that 40% pool up to the top of the market. Now, conversely, Mr. Chairman, what it doesn't do is it doesn't change the regular license fee for that 60% pool, which currently leaves it at that price, which is right down at the very bottom. I think it's number 2 in all cases for the 11 or 12 western states. So we will now have one that's at the top of the market and one that's at the bottom of the market. And for my colleagues that like to figure out what the cost per pound is, It's going to be cheaper per cost per pound for these 60% licenses that we're not changing than any other western state, or equal or close to that. So, Mr. Chairman, that's what it does for the elk during the license. It's only that 40% pool that's been in place for a long time. This just raises that up to put us at the top of the market for those 40% of the licenses. Mr. Chairman, if you flip over to the next page, this is what is nomenclature from the task force used over and over was the big five, which is the bighorn sheep, mountain goat, moose, grizzly bear, and bison licenses. And it raises those non-resident license fees for these 5 species. You can see on page 4, bighorn sheep goes from $2,300 to $3,000, mountain goat from $2,160 to $2,750, moose from $1,980 to $2,750. Grizzly bear, there's no comparable fees, but goes to $7,500. And then if you look at the next section, which deals specifically with wild bison, that non-resident license fee will go to $6,000. Mr. Chairman, this is based on a market-based analysis to what all of these other states that have these species, what do they charge to? What's the value of a bighorn sheep permit in the western United States? And what it gets you to, if you take the 10 or 11 states that have that, this puts this right in the top 2 comparable to what that bighorn sheep permit. So it's a market-based analysis. What are other states charging? What are applicants willing to pay for these license fees? That's where those numbers come from. Mr. Chairman, that's the bill. I'd stand for any questions.
Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. The town I came from in central Wyoming, a small town, depended entirely on the hunting season for their revenue for the year. So it was their economic development period for the motels, the restaurants, and the bars. We made enough in that 2-month period to carry the rest of the year. At these prices, it's going to slow that down to a standstill. This year, we saw a lot less deer hunters in that small community, and it really makes a big difference. These out-of-state hunters is who's paying the bill for those communities. And that's true of any small community in Wyoming. The people from out of state like to come to those smaller communities and hunt in those areas. And I think this will slow it down considerably. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I was the one on the previous bill that first raised the constitutional objection. This is the proper way to do this, and this is bluntly a revenue-raising measure. This is the proper way to do it. Mr. Chairman, I think with the bifurcated system, which still gives the ordinary person who likes to hunt, who can't afford the really high prices, Mr. Chairman, an ability to periodically win a draw, I think we'll see those will still be coming. Those will still provide the business support that for our small towns and communities, and frankly, some of our bigger communities like my community, where hunting is a valuable way to attract people. They'll still be attracted. There'll be enough. And I would urge us to support the committee. They may or may not have got these figures exactly right, but I think the approach was sensible in trying to figure out what these were as a market-based system, Mr. Chairman, so on and for the bill.
Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I just wanted to reminisce just a little bit about the travels of this particular bill and this effort by the floor leader. In our final meeting, I happened to be on the Travel, Recreation, and Wildlife Committee these past 2 years. In the final meeting last year, the good floor leader brought this idea to the committee. And quite honestly, it was a tough swallow, Mr. Chairman, because of the size of the increase in all of these non-resident fees. That was part of it. The other part of it was we simply didn't have enough time to, to really digest what this was all about. So we did not pass a suggested amendment by the floor leader and ask if he wouldn't take this back through the task force, which he did. And I just want to salute him for that and for all the work that went into the effort on this bill. Now, it's not very often that we see this kind of increase in anything that the Wyoming Senate would support. But I've said all along, started 2 years ago, to say whatever that task force did, I respect so many of those who served on that task force, and I respect the work they did. And so I'm going to support this bill, even though it represents a pretty big jump for our out-of-state hunters. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We heard this bill twice on our committee, and the question that came up a couple different times was, what was the vote from the Wildlife Task Force? And it was 16-1, and then there was one excused, I believe. It's hard to get a task force that will agree to anything, mostly. There's a lot of dissension and that sort of thing, but they worked this through the task force, and that task force was made up of, as we said before, a variety of people in our communities that, whether it be, motel owners, whether it was hunters and sportsmen, whether it was outfitters, whether it was, we had a whole variety of folks on that, and I followed them throughout the interim. Good conversations. I think 3 of the folks, because I got asked this, were actual outfitters. Now, who will this bill probably help a bit? Maybe the outfitters. Those outfitters, I think, are also hunters. But the bottom line is, the Game and Fish did not bring this bill forward, but they will help manage it. And one of the questions I asked was, will this affect anything in terms of the number of licenses, or how you guys will take care of the impacts of having to change to a bifurcated system? They seem to think they can handle it just fine. And the bottom line is really, we have been putting our deer and elk and moose and all of our wildlife, in kind of a disadvantage because we don't charge much compared to the states around us. We've been at the bottom of the tier. And now with these raises, it'll put us up, closer to the top. But what you have to remember is these, our elk and our deer and our moose and so on, that's a commodity that belongs to us, and we do need to protect it. And so I think the 40% of the folks that will come in, if they're willing to pay those extra funds, I think it ends up being about 5.7 million that will come in to the Game and Fish. That helps us. It doesn't change the amount of licenses. The Game and Fish will still take a look at, migration routes and how our deer and our elk and all our other animals are doing, before they make those decisions on the number of licenses. So that doesn't change. So all in all, I think the Wildlife Task Force did a great job, and I'm in support of this bill.
Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I came down, met with the county commissioners and a group that has a great interest in our wildlife. I'm talking about building one more overpass in the southwest to accommodate migration routes, accommodate the increased traffic that we're seeing with the mineral industry and all that goes with it, and that's protect the wildlife. We're spending millions for overpasses, underpasses, everything to keep them safe. A little extra money from those coming out of state to enjoy our great wildlife won't hurt us a bit. Getting support for this bill back home. Thank you on and for the bill.
Thank you. Further discussion? Majority Floor Leader Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I need to address my colleagues' concerns. This doesn't change the number of licenses would be available. I live in one of those communities that the profit margin for most of our businesses is 2 months out of the year, and that's called hunting season. Because the biggest, we have the most heavily hunted deer area in the state of Wyoming, very robust. It doesn't change the number of hunters that will be in those communities. It doesn't change the ability of some of these people are going to pay more. And typically what we saw, we looked at all the statistical data, and on average, the non-resident that's willing to pay more for a license spends a significant more in those communities. But the point I want to leave to my colleague, it doesn't change the number of licenses. There's still going to be the same number of hunters in those communities as they were before, and I don't want to protract this. But the way the license allocation system goes. So if these licenses are underprescribed, in other words, there's 40 of these high-price licenses, if they're underprescribed, say there was only 30 applicants for those next 10 licenses flow right down into that lower 60% pool, so they're still there, and there will be, in some cases, more low-priced licenses available, and particularly in places like eastern Wyoming that's mostly private property anyway. And so just trying to model what the effect of that was, and I think the good chairman talked about it. It's estimated somewhere between $5 and $6 million. Past president talked about that money's going to get put to good use. This is voluntary. When these non-residents apply, they get to choose which pool they want to apply for. You don't have to apply for the high price. You can apply for the low price pool. But I hope that addresses my colleague's concern. It will not change the number of hunters in those communities because we're very sensitive to that.
Ready? Question's been called. All those in favor of Senator Schuler's motion to, when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate or House Bill 200, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman,
Majority Floor Leader Hicks.
did you say the Ides have it or the Ides have it?
The Ides of March have it.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Back up here just a little bit. Majority Floor Leader got in front of me here. House Bill number 200 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 209. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 209, Hathaway Scholarship Accounts Transfer Timing, sponsored by the Capital Finance Committee, an act relating to education. Was referred to Committee Number 4, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Weightman, Brennan, Rothfuss, Scott, and Steinmetz. Senator Scott, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What's your pleasure? Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I move when the Committee of the Whole rise and report it do so with a recommendation that House Bill 209 do pass, and I yield to Senator Rothfuss for an explanation of the House bill.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, House Bill 209 relates to cash flow on the Hathaway scholarship accounts. It is largely a cash flow cleanup, but I'll explain how it works now and how this effectively amends it moving forward. Right now with the Hathaway scholarship, there's an expenditure account and a reserve account. Money that comes in goes into the expenditure account, fills that up over time up until June 30th, and then June 30th, unencumbered funds in that account, which are basically all of the funds in the account, are transferred to the Hathaway reserve account. Then, when they're needed, about 3 months later, you have to transfer it back from the reserve account into the expenditure account to spend on the Hathaway. And then if there's any extra that's unencumbered, you would potentially move it back the next June. This recognizes the timing of the expenditures and delays, all it does is delay the pour over from the expenditure account to the reserve account to October 15th, so that those funds that are needed for the Hathaway in the September semester are available in the expenditure account and are expended from the expenditure account. And the encumbered funds are also acknowledged at that point, because there is at that point knowledge of what funds are going to be needed for the following semester. Then following that recognition, October 15th comes around, and the excess in the expenditure account is moved into the reserve account. So, Mr. Chairman, it is simply recognition of the real way the funds are being expended and harmonizes the timeline of the cash flow with the need for the Hathaway. At the end of the day, it doesn't do anything else, doesn't change total funds, but cleans up when the pour-overs take place. And the only potential unintended consequence is if you have other legislation that we're contemplating moving through where we're trying to create an effectively inviolate reserve account so that we can get better yield off of it by tapping into the reserve account and then refilling the reserve account and tapping into the reserve account, we'll end up losing revenue. So this is a great approach for us to more appropriately have our savings in savings as needed and spend out of the expenditure account without requiring additional transfers. I'd be happy to answer any questions on and for the cleanup bill.
Thank you, Senator Rothfuss. Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, when we had the bill in committee, there was some concern we'd have a conflict with that other bill. My understanding is that has been checked out and there isn't, and this works no matter what we do with the other bill, unless we do something that's totally unanticipated. So, Mr. Chairman, on and for the bill.
Further discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor of Senator Scott's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it does so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 200, all those in favor? Oh, excuse me, backwards. House Bill 209, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Nay. No. Let's see. House Bill 209 has passed Committee of the Whole. Let's see here. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill number 11. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 11, State Park Rangers Retirement, sponsored by the Judiciary Committee, an act relating to retirement.
You've heard the reading of the bill.
Was referred to Committee number 5, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators French, Hicks, Ide, Gold, and Steinmetz. Senator Steinmetz, chairman. Was re-referred to Committee number 2, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Guru, Kinski, Nethercott, and Salazar. Senator Kinski, chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What's your pleasure? Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with a favor or a recommendation that House Bill 11 do pass. And for an explanation of the bill, I call on Senator Hicks.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman.
Majority Floor Leader Hicks, excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, this is a good little joint judiciary interim committee. It's been to a lot of committees, Mr. Chairman, and all the committees really like this bill. You know, it went to judiciary, to ag, and into appropriations, and it's just a good little bill, Mr. Chairman. So let me explain what it does. It's really pretty simple. We have 5 deputized law enforcement specialists within the state of Wyoming, and they're the only 5 deputized law enforcement individuals that are not on the law enforcement retirement plan, Mr. Chairman. And so all the bill does is allow these full-time rangers that are full-time law enforcement with state parks to move from, they're currently in what we call the big plan for state employees. This just moves them onto the law enforcement retirement plan. There is differences between the 2 plans, but this is where these individuals should have always been, and from just for whatever reason, they never got there. but I'd stand for any questions on the bill.
Questions? Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for the bill. The TRW committee looked at this issue as well, and the reason for it was pretty apparent to us. During the summertime, one of our state parks is actually the third largest city in all of Wyoming. And so these rangers are out there keeping order, making sure that campers who are out there having fun are doing so responsibly, breaking up any instances where fights could escalate or crimes could occur. So they serve a very critical and important function. We heard about this in TRW. Thanks the Good Judiciary Committee for their work, and then our Agriculture Committee for taking a look at it as well. So on for the bill.
Thank you. Senator Nethercott.
I'm just excited at the amount of senators who are in support of this bill. I know I'm in competition to stand up on this bill. Just a piece of information too about the bill. There are 4 full-time employees of the state park rangers that would be subject to this bill. So a big impact for them, but not a big impact to the state. So just 4 of them total.
Thank you. Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No competition. I was actually going to rise for point of order, something that I learned from the good clerk. When we're in the committee of the whole, there are no titles other than senator. So you did address the majority floor leader as majority floor leader. In the committee of the whole, there are no titles other than senator. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Pappas.
And our good clerk could hopefully she'll back me up.
Senator Landon.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I just want to apologize for calling that senator from Carbon County floor leader. I mean, he's a senator, that's for sure. So, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Landon.
Just
Senator
one last-
Hicks.
Is there any other committees would like to hear this bill? Call for the question.
Question's been called. All those in favor of Senator Steinmetz's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it does so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 11, say aye. Those opposed? No. The motion, let's see, House Bill 11 has passed the committee of the whole. Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, I move the committee of the whole rise and report.
Okay. You've heard the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? The motion passes, carries. Yeah, I know. Thank you.
Reading clerk will read committee the whole report.
Mr. President, your committee of the whole, having had under considerations bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. House Bill 200, do pass. House Bill 209, do pass. House Bill 11, do pass. Senator Ide, Chairman.
Senator Ide.
Mr. President, I move for the adoption of the committee of the whole to report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Division, no. Motion passed. Do we have any reports from committees of any kind? No, we're all cleared up. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, that clears the desk.
Mr. President, I move the Senate stand adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Announcements. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources Committee number 5 will meet today at 3:30 upon adjournment in room W2 and online to consider House Bill 222, Colorado River Advisory Committee, House Bill 76, Licensing Boards Amendments, and House Bill 17, State Land Leases. And we will also meet Monday, February 27th upon noon recess to consider interim topics.
Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources. We will also meet next Tuesday, February 28th, upon noon recess to discuss interim topics. We will also meet at adjournment for an interview of one of the candidates for appointment. Thank you.
Senator Landon.
Mr. President, your Judiciary Committee will meet Monday morning at 8 a.m. To discuss interim topics. That'll be in Extension Room 5 downstairs. Once again, 8 o'clock on Monday morning.
Senator Case.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Just kind of a heads up to my committee. We have 2 conferees to talk to and have a hearing, but they can't make our meeting time on Tuesday, so we're going to try to fit that in at Monday at 12:30. There'll be two appointments, one for the Office of Consumer Advocate and one for the Public Service Commission. Then thinking ahead to the week, we're going to meet with our colleagues down the hall on Wednesday, probably at about the same time, to discuss interim topics. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you. Further announcements. Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask the members of the Education Committee if they can meet with me on a procedural issue right here as soon as we adjourn.
Senator Barlow.
Mr. President, Joint Conference Committee on Senate File 61 will meet tomorrow at 9 o'clock in room 110, West 110. Thank you.
Thank you. Further announcements. Ellen, how many bills do we have left? Roughly. Doesn't matter. We're down near the end, folks. You guys have done stellar. I got 20 or 25 bills left. I'm guessing by Monday, we're going to be pretty well through the House files. Nice job, folks. It's been pretty neat. We're, as usual, a few strides ahead of the other side of the building, so keep it up. With that, we will stand adjourned until 10 a.m. 2:24 tomorrow. We're adjourned.